This is Lorenzo, and this is the Training Routines Taxonomy video series, lesson number 11. It's on the 7th routine, the bridge track, which is a gymnastics routine focused on developing your core in the posterior chain. And it's been designed to help you master one of the 30 fitness benchmarks, the bridge itself. And we're going to do that using our MSP exercise protocol framework. Only 5 exercises. See you inside. The bridge track is the second of 4 total core chain routines. Starting to the left of our matrix, the routine type that we're dealing with is a track. Therefore, it's a gymnastics routine. And as we already saw, we're focused on core development in the posterior chain using the bridge and its many progressions. And together with the deadlift weightlifting complex, the bridge track will help us master posterior chain, extension, power. To the right of our matrix, we have our exercise protocol, and we know that your protocol is only as good as its ability to fulfill its objectives. And in order to have objectives, you need a training plan. The objective for the bridge is the bridge itself. It's a benchmark of mobility. The requirements for the bridge at minimum is wrist, shoulder, thoracic, and hip flexor mobility, as well as scapular elevation, shoulder flexion strength. We will need an open and stall bar training zone, as well as a mat, a box, and blocks to help us fulfill our strategy. Okay, so now that we have our objective and our strategy in mind and our tactics in place, let's see what the MSP exercise protocol framework looks like as it applies to the bridge track. For our first 2 exercises in the mobility category, serving as our warm-up, we have our first exercise, an open hip wall lunge, followed by an open hip active cobra. In our stability superset, following the 60-second rule, we have the open hip prone arch. And for our 4th exercise, we focus on working on our bridge itself and its progressions. For our 5th and final exercise, following the 30 rep rule in the strength category, we have full range back extensions. The wall lunge, also known as the couch stretch, as we see it over here, is a quadricep and hip flexor stretch that we want to hold for at least 3 minutes per side, depending on our current level of mobility and stiffness. Once we're done with the wall lunge, we will get into the active cobra position. I very much like the Egoscue method variation of the active cobra. The focus is to isolate and extend the thoracic spine, but without putting undue pressure on the low back, which is very common in these positions. So you're going to get into a diamond position with the hips as you see it here. Squeeze the glutes. You want to slightly externally rotate the shoulders while also pushing your elbow down and forward into the ground, and then actively extending the thoracic spine. You can contract it for 5 seconds, relax for 5 seconds, and you do this for a total of 2 minutes. Together, the wall lunge and active cobra, lasting no longer than 10 minutes, are the 2 minimum mobility drills to help us open up our hips, our thoracic spine, to help us fulfill the minimum hip and thoracic mobility requirements to help us make progress in the bridge. Moving on to our stability superset. For our 3rd exercise, we have the open hip prone arch, also known as the Superman. The goal here is to get into a position where we can maximally isolate and activate all the muscles in the posterior chain with our feet together. We can activate the hamstrings, glutes, the erector spinae, as well as try to open up the thoracic spine, much like we did in the active cobra, holding this position for at least 1 minute. If 1 minute is too difficult, you have 2 options. you can drop down to an easier progression where instead of extending the arms out in front of you, you can extend the shoulders back, pushing the shoulder blades together, following the 60-second rule, which means you try to do one set of 60 seconds straight. If that's too difficult, break it up into 2 sets of 30. And if that's still too difficult, you can start with 3 sets of 20 seconds. Moving on, for our second stability exercise and the fourth exercise in our routine, we're going to be focusing on the bridge itself. The reason you don't see me doing the bridge is because I'm still working on my full bridge. The full bridge, you have flat feet, and notice the arch is coming from the thoracic spine, not the low back. A common mistake is to force yourself into a full bridge, putting undue strain in the low back. Instead, we recommend you use elevation to take the pressure out of the low back, as you can see me doing it here. And notice that even in this position, my thoracic spine is locked short. So I really need to learn to open up my thoracic spine so that I can get into the full bridge without putting the strain on my low back. If you don't have a stall bar, which I highly recommend you get one, you can use the plier box for elevation, but I do prefer using the Swedish bars because this way, as you progress, you can lower yourself down rung by rung until you are into the full bridge. Now, while I only mentioned the elevated bridge progression, there are many progressions that you have to consider in order to help you achieve the full bridge, simply because it's not only about hip and thoracic spine mobility. There's also wrist mobility that people struggle with, shoulder flexion mobility that you may need to work on. So make sure that when you work on your bridge, that at minimum you do these exercises, but you may need to also include other supplementary stretches to help you unlock the full bridge. The elevated bridge, together with the prone arch, are the minimum exercises you need to help you start working on your hip and thoracic mobility, your scapular elevation and shoulder flexion strength to help you make progress in the bridge. Okay, so once we're done with our mobility and stability preparatory work, we can finally move on to the fifth and final exercise in our routine, focused on strength development in the low back or the posterior chain, what is known as the back extension, and more specifically, the reverse hypers. And we'll do so following the 30 rep rule. Okay, so for our reverse hypers, as you can see them being performed here, you're going to need a box. You will then elevate your legs until about 90 degrees or perpendicular to the ground, just enough until you can maximally contract the glutes. As you can see, I'm actually straddling my legs as well to incorporate the glute medius and minimus while I'm at it. We recommend that you do 3 sets of 10 or 2 sets of 15. As you get stronger, you can try to do 30 reps in one go, following the 30 rep rule. So in summary, the bridge track is a wall lunge, followed by the active cobra, the prone arch, the bridge and its progressions, and finally 30 reverse hyper back extensions.